Today on the show, in the wake of a new psychological disorder that doctors say has only come to light in the last couple of years, we have an incredibly valuable talk with Tommy Vext, lead singer of Bad Wolves.
Can't you see? Everyone! They're here already! You're next!
Let's go!
Welcome to the future, where the glass is half full and you'll need new glasses, where you'll be jumping from conclusions.
The past is annulled, and a new future is born!
Never before in history has so much meant so little to so many. AD on the radio.
So, you know, a lot of people will tell you that rock music is dead. Hell, Gene Simmons of Kiss. Love him or loathe him, love or loathe the music of Kiss. Well, this is a guy who's a bit of an authority on the subject of rock music, and he rather famously said that rock music was dead a little while ago. I don't know. I have my doubts. And the reason why is because I've seen great evidence to the contrary. There's a bunch of rock tours happening over the summer, and I was at one of them this past week just gone by. I was at that Breaking Benjamin, what was the lineup? It was Breaking Benjamin, Five Finger Death Punch, Bad Wolves, Nothing More tour. And, well, there were people aplenty there that had plunked down their hard-earned cash because they needed a night of rock music. There's something cathartic about the experience of going to a rock concert. It's both physical, visceral, and if you do it right, spiritual. It's a massive release. There's a certain type of music that is basically meant to divest you of all the pent-up weekly frustration that you've had. You get into the pit, you kind of lose your freaking ever-loving mind, and you kind of exercise your day-to-day demons by being transported to another world by a band that screams and shouts an awful lot, and usually sets some stuff on fire. Anyways, there was a lot of people at this rock show, and well, I felt really fortunate to be there because it had been a while since I'd been to something like that. I mean, I've been to lots of concerts. It's sort of part of my gig, but it had been a while since I'd been to a big rock concert. And it was kind of cool to see it reaffirmed that no matter what the Gene Simmons of this world will tell you, rock music is alive and well. And it also gave me a chance to talk to a whole bunch of artists and musicians that I really sort of respect and recognize. Talked to several members of those bands, and I'm going to bring you some interviews that I did that I was fortunate enough to do over the next couple of days. And I felt especially lucky to talk to this guy, Tommy Vext. Now, if you're not sort of in the know with regard to the metal community, or if you're not from New York, or if you're not part of the New York City hardcore scene, or that's a thing that's passed you by, there's a very good chance you don't know who Tommy Vext is. But Tommy Vext is a guy that I thought it was really important that we talk to, because Tommy Vext is a guy who had a humongous breakthrough in his career recently. A career that's been going since 1996, I believe, when he was still in high school and playing his first shows as part of the New York City hardcore scene at CBGB's. Now, this is a guy that's hucked away and kind of really beaten his life choices into submission. There's a lot of people that would tell you rock music, any kind of music, this does not represent a career. And this guy kind of sort of didn't take no for an answer at any point in his life. And I think that's a valuable story to hear. I think that's a good chat to have. Because all too often, we lose that youthful exuberance of youth. You've noticed this, right? You become more politically aware as you become an adult. And part of that is just, well, it's part of growing up. But I think a big part of the reason why you, me, all of us start paying more attention to the world of politics is because, well, our dreams rather conspicuously fail to come true a lot of the time. And subconsciously, we start looking around for people to blame. When you're 16, 17, 18 years old, about to get out of high school, about to go to college, about to do whatever it is you're going to do, you probably have dreams and visions of how your life is going to work out. You are going to bring this world to your knees. You're going to make it. You're going to bring this world to its knees, rather. You're going to make this world your bitch. You are going to bend life to your will and create a life that you've had pictured in your mind for the last couple of years. And more often than not, things don't shake out the way you had planned going into them. And your dreams, your hopes, your aspirations, your goals, that you started forming in your mind when you're 16, 17 years old, when you had no idea who was running for what and didn't care because you're going to make the world your bitch, like I said? Well, when those fail to happen, a lot of the time we start looking around going, why didn't this happen? We look for something or someone to blame, something or someone to hold accountable. If you're like me, you definitely went through a phase of that. But I really like my talk with Tommy Vext from this band Bad Wolves, because like I said, he's been hucking away doing music in one form or another since he was like 16 years old. And the better part of 20 years later, it's all kind of finally worked out for him. But do you think his vision was compromised by who was in office? No. He had a must, something that he had to do with his life, something he had to achieve. And, well, it had nothing to do with who was running for what. And I think that's a valuable story to hear. So we're going to talk to him in a little bit, and I'm excited for you to hear what he had to say.
Real radio.
104.1.
Where the left and right come together for fundamental truths. AD on the radio, on Twitter at ADSXE.
So somehow I ended up in a mosh pit. I'd kind of been drawn into it. I remember the last mosh pit I was in. I remember being in my very early 20s, I think it was, and I went to see this thrash metal band called Overkill at a venue in New York City called Coney Island High. Do you remember Overkill? If you were not necessarily into that sort of thing back in the day, you might remember Overkill because they were on a rather memorable episode of Beavis and Butthead with their song Elimination. Elimination! Elimination! That one. Freaking great. Overkill, awesome band, tons of fun. And I went to see them play. And I remember getting into the pit at an Overkill concert. And, you know, hopping and bopping around, did a little bit of crowd surfing. I might have even stage dived. And after it was all over, I was like, that's it for me. I don't need to be in mosh pits anymore. That was fun when I was, 13, 14, 15, 16 years old. That time is now over. I just didn't feel like I belonged in there anymore. Love the music, love the incredible musicianship on display with a band like Overkill. But I kind of felt like a bit of a phony in the pit. Kind of felt like I was trying to recapture some part of my misspent youth, which was strange because I was still a youth and still definitely misspending that youth. But I decided, I was like, that's it for me. No more mosh pits. Thank you very much. I'll be just fine. But somehow I wound up in a mosh pit this past week just gone by. I'll tell you how it happened. I was surrounded by sweaty, gyrating people hopping up and down a circle pit. You ever been in one of those? A circle pit broke out. People running around in a circle, shoving each other. I've never quite figured out how we evolved into this sort of thing, how the punk rock and hardcore scene evolved into this sort of expression of how it is we felt in reaction to someone else's music. But there's no two ways about it. Unless you get a size 10 Doc Martin to the face, it's a beautiful, exciting, and cathartic thing. Maybe it's the element of danger. I don't know what it is. I remember when I was in a band, I had to sign all these things saying, I will not start mosh pits. I will not incite people to stage dive. I remember our tour manager at the time going like, whatever you do, don't tell the truth on these things. Because I've been to your shows and they're freaking nuts. That thing where you dive off of lighting rigs into crowds, you must not admit to doing these things. Otherwise, we're not going to get the necessary tour insurance so that your LLC can be insured and we won't be able to go on tour. So don't tell the truth on this stuff. That was my tour manager and my manager told me back in the day. So I was accustomed to starting that sort of thing, but actually having been part of them, I'd forgotten what it was like. I'd forgotten what it was like to be surrounded by people, to feel like the push of a crowd, to feel the reckless abandon that comes from going like, F it, I am sweaty and I'm going to take physical risks. And, I know I got all dressed up to come here tonight, but it doesn't matter anymore because I am in the middle of some stuff. And it happened because, Well, I went to see this band, like I said, Bad Wolves, play. And they're the opening band on the bill that included like Breaking Benjamin, a Five Finger Death Punch, and nothing more. And, well, as these things go, you start off in sort of a quiet way. Not everybody knows who they are. Not everyone is there to see them. It's earlier on in the night. And I was just standing close because I wanted to see what the hell was going on. And before I knew it, a crowd had gathered behind me, a crowd that I couldn't really fight my way out of without some doing. And all of a sudden, I was caught up. I was caught up in the crowd. I was lifted off my feet at one point. I did a little bit of crowd surfing, something that a man of my age should have left behind a long time ago, but it was not by choice. It just sort of happened. And, it's not something I would do on purpose again, but it was an excellent reminder of the incredible power of music. And as I was on stage, this guy that I was talking about, who we're going to listen to the chat I had with him in a little bit, this guy, Tommy Vext, he's on stage, the front man of this band. And this reaction that people are having to his music, this visceral, tangible, emotional, cathartic reaction that people are having to his music, that's the culmination of years and years of his hard work. And I knew we were going to talk about this at some point. This incredible power that this guy wields, that he's manifested in his own life through the force of his will alone. This guy has had this desire to go out and make music, and it's gotten to the point where grown men like yours truly can get caught up in a mosh pit that he's created because he's become such a dominant force in other people's emotions. I knew we were going to talk about it, but I think it's especially important to talk about it today. And it's especially important to talk about it today because, well, the contrast to this guy using the force of his will to make his dreams come true and putting himself in a position where he can create mosh pits and things of that nature. It's a stark contrast between, well, that and a story I read about what therapists in the U.S. say is a problem that they're treating more and more. It's a specific type of anxiety disorder that didn't exist a couple of years ago. And now it does. The founder of the DC Counseling and Psychology Therapy Center in Washington, D.C., says there is a collective politically induced anxiety among patients that straight up did not exist a little while ago. What exactly is it? And why is it so important that we talk about this and contrast this story of politically related anxiety with our friend Tommy Vext that I've been telling you about? We'll get into that next.
For more stimulation and less irritation, 9 out of 10 doctors choose KPRC AM 950, Houston's more stimulating talk radio.
Don't get the blues, get all the news. We mean all of you guys out there in Radioland. All aboard!
He's back. AD on the radio.
Give it up, yeah. Give it up, yeah. Bring this on, come on.
So, as you and I were saying, I was going to play you this conversation I was lucky enough to have with Tommy Vext of Bad Wolves. And if you don't necessarily recognize the name Bad Wolves, you probably, almost definitely, it's been inescapable all summer long, heard their cover of the Cranberries' Zombie. That's who we're talking about. But I thought it was going to be a lot of fun to play this conversation that I had with Tommy Vext of Bad Wolves when I ran into him at their show with Breaking Benjamin and Five Finger Death Punch the other night. However, it became really important to me that we listened to our chat with Tommy when I found out about this new anxiety disorder that therapists say only came into existence in the last couple of years. It's true. And the reason it's important to contrast the actions of a man like Tommy Vext with this anxiety disorder is because it really is proof positive of what taking your own life in your own hands can do for you. Now, what's the anxiety disorder? Well, here's the thing. There's this woman, Elizabeth Lamott, I think her name is. She's a therapist. She's a founder of the DC Counseling and Psychotherapy Center in Washington, D.C. And you may have heard about this, but she says that there is collectively a politically induced anxiety among more and more patients. She said that more and more patients are coming to her for treatment with anxiety disorders that come from politics. People are nervous about the fate of the world. And she claims that President Trump's name has come up frequently in sessions with her clients. Many feel on edge about the possible effects of his decisions, the way he makes his way in the world, his policies, his rhetoric. She said, quote, "There is a fear of the world ending. It's very disorienting and constantly unsettling." And she calls it Trump anxiety disorder. Yeah, Lamott says that patients with Trump anxiety disorder exhibit a behavior similar to patients who have a parent with a personality disorder. She says, whether it's conscious or not, I think that we look to the President of the United States as a psychological parent. This is from Newsweek. Newsweek said, although Trump anxiety disorder is not an official diagnosis, the symptoms include a lack of sleep, feeling of losing control and helplessness in an unpredictable sociopathical climate, along with endless negative headlines and excessive time spent on social media. Now, look, if you feel anxious about the fate of the world, I get it. I understand it. We live in weird times. You and I have talked about this a lot in the past, but we live in a day and age that, well, our grandchildren are going to write essays about in history class. All right, let's take a look at what happened in 2017, 2018, and the next couple of years after that, because boy, did things get strange and different and confusing. What the hell was up with that? Here's my paper and my thesis on it. There's going to be folks debating this sort of thing for a very long time. There's going to be people studying what we're living through right now for a very long time. And it is, make no mistake, an unsettling point in America's history to be alive. But you know what? There are lots of unsettling points in America's history to be alive. Donald Trump, I think, is a man who would like to proclaim his own historical significance over and over again. A lot of the time by boo-hooing. What did he say? I think he said something along the lines of, after he met with Putin, he said, I paraphrase, of course, but he said, before I met with Putin, relationships between Russia and the U.S. had never been worse. Now I fixed it. I believe that, or Kennedy, still alive, he would say that whole Cuban Missile Crisis thing might have been a scotch more tenuous than what we're going through right now. I mean, it's one thing to have accusations of collusion, accusations of meddling in our democracy, all the sorts of headlines that have been flying around for the past year or so. But when there are nukes pointed directly at us, that's a bit more of a time where you put your analyst on danger money. Donald Trump, I think, also proclaimed, or was it Fox News? I think it was Trump and Fox News proclaimed that there's never been an American president that's been the subject of greater hatred than Donald Trump. I believe Lincoln, Kennedy, and Reagan would all be like, you forgetting something that happened to us? What the hell, man? What the hell? So times have always been difficult. Times have always been troubling. Times have never been simple. Democracy is a messy thing. But I absolutely get it. I absolutely understand the desire to sort of go, oh man, I need a break from this. I can't take this. I can't handle this. I'm going to go talk to my shrink about this. As much as, things like the Cuban Missile Crisis were an unsettling time period to live through, we also live in a day and age where there's a new form of anxiety. We fear that which we don't understand. We fear that which we don't know. And a president with a Twitter account used to say things like, I've got a better nuke button than another world leader that's also got nukes, and my nukes work, and I'm going to bring fire and fury upon people that don't respect the United States of America. There's no way anyone, whether you're a Trump supporter or not, there's no way anyone can look at that situation and go, I feel okay about this. This makes me feel safe. I mean, there's some people that said, good. Yeah, he's got the big stick out. He's showing American military might and power. So there. Other world leaders, they won't mess with us. Now I feel safe. But as much as you say that, you're still like, oh God, what did he just do? If only because no other president has ever done anything like it before, ever. So I get it. I understand. I understand why people might feel, well, I understand the existence of this Trump anxiety disorder. I understand the existence of the people feeling out of control. I mean, Trump anxiety disorder, like we said, is not an official diagnosis. But these symptoms include a lack of sleep, a feeling of losing control, and helplessness in an unpredictable socio-political climate, along with endless negative headlines and excessive time spent on social media. And we talk about this a lot on the show. You see these things happening and you go, what can I do? What can I possibly do? How could I affect change? When you've got two guys that can't be trusted to make the right decision when it comes to haircuts, with their finger on the buttons that could fry us all, what can I do? Me. But cast your mind back. I mean, even if we didn't live through it, I'm too young to remember the Cuban Missile Crisis or Vietnam or any of these things. But America has been through the ringer in much more pronounced ways in the past. It's just this is unknown. This is new territory. This is completely new territory to all of us. So I get it. I understand it. I sympathize with people that are going to the shrink with an anxiety disorder that they say is completely due to the leader of the leader of the free world and the president of these United States of America. But I also think that if you are suffering from Trump anxiety disorder, you're not giving yourself enough credit. And this is why I think it was incredibly important that we listened to the conversation that I was lucky enough to have with Tommy Vext of Bad Wolves. Like I said, this is a guy that had been around the block several times. He'd been in all sorts of bands. He had a band called Vext. He was in a band called Divine Heresy. He was the lead singer of a band called Snot, a legendary band called Snot, whose original frontman passed away in a tragic car accident back in the day. But when they got back together and went on the road, well, he was their frontman. He'd also done a stint as Five Finger Death Punch's lead singer when Ivan, the lead singer of Five Finger Death Punch, went to rehab. If you look around the internet, you'll find singing tutorial videos with this guy in them. He's being used as sort of like a guinea pig when a singing instructor teaches you the proper way to scream and growl and stuff like that. He's worked at his craft. He's hustled to be where he is. And it's an inspiring lesson to you, me, all of us, I think, really. Because like I said, when you're a kid, you have these dreams, you have these ideas, you have this picture in your head of how the world's going to shake out in front of you. Did you really care who was running for any kind of political office when you were a kid back in the day, when you were in high school? Probably not. And when did people start paying attention to politics and politicians? Well, when those dreams kind of fail to happen. You go to college, maybe you get the degree, you make your way in the world, you write exams, you work really hard, and you've got these dreams of all these ways you're going to set the world on fire. At least a lot of us do. And then life being a fickle thing that often doesn't really bend to our will the way we think it will. Well, we don't necessarily get the desired results we want by the time we're making our way in the world. You get to be 23, 24, 25, and you're like, oh, crap. Not only have I failed to set the world on fire, I've got this degree that's kind of useless. It's not helping me get a job. I'm still bussing tables, or if I do have a job, it's not enough to pay my bills. It's not enough to pay my student loans. Here I am living at the effect, just kind of surviving. Why didn't it work out the way I wanted it to work out? Well, thanks, Obama. That was a bumper sticker for a little bit. Reaganomics sucked. We're still recovering from it. Ugh, how could anybody expect to achieve anything in George Bush's America? Donald Trump's in charge. We're all going to die. As you give up on your dreams little by little. If you're like me, you at some point look around and go, who's to blame? I could never succeed in this political climate with these leaders. Maybe I'll move to Canada. I've thought these things. And most people I've talked to about this have at one point or another thought these things. But you realize, don't you, after a while, you can chase this idea around in your head that it always will 100% come down to you. It will always 100% be your responsibility to make your way in the world. And yeah, the world's unfair. But you know what? Occasionally it's going to be unfair in your favor. And those times when it's unfair in a way that doesn't result in the best things for you, well, that's a learning experience. That's a chance to strengthen your resolve. That's a chance to push back and push harder. And the reason I like the story of Tommy Vext is, like I said, he started back in the day in 1996. In 1996, he played his first show ever at CBGB's in New York City, part of the New York City hardcore scene. And he realized that he was traveling to a different place than where he lived, where he grew up in Brooklyn, even though it was only to Manhattan, a hop, skip, and a jump away. He realized that music was taking him somewhere. And he realized that from there on in, that was all he could do. That was all he wanted to do. And the reason I point out the year 1996, when he got this idea in his head that he wanted to be a musician, is to illustrate a couple things. One, it's 2018 now. Here we are, 22 years later. The guy never gave up. And two, all these different presidents, all these different administrations came and went. When he started making music, Bill Clinton was president. When Bill Clinton left office, economically, America was in a pretty good spot. Not necessarily because of Clinton, but because of this brand new industry, the interwebs. And we've had all sorts of ups and downs since then. And don't forget, he was living in New York City, a place that was tremendously impacted by 9/11. And throughout everything, he was unfaltering in his vision of what he wanted to do, achieve, and become. One thing that you don't get when you have a conversation with Tommy Vext is the idea that he really blames anyone for anything that's ever happened to him. And that the things that have happened, he's made happen through the force of his will alone. And in a day and age where people are going to therapy because of Trump anxiety disorder, I think it's a good reminder to all of us to talk to a guy like Tommy Vext and, well, remember that doesn't matter who's in the White House, doesn't matter who the elected official is at the time. It's a great lesson and a great reminder in the idea that where you go in this world always has been and always will be down to you. We'll have our chat with Tommy Vext next.
Sometimes you just know you're done. You're longing for that shining sun. You walk these streets most every day. You're waiting to get washed away. Radio. Radio. 104.1.
Now, more AD on the radio.
Back once again, the ill behavior. Delivering and giving you my musical savior. Back once again, it's your boy AD. And can't nobody rock a body better than me. Back once again, the ill behavior. Delivering and giving you a musical savior. Back once again, it's your boy AD. And can't nobody rock a body better than me.
So I'm really excited for you to check out the conversation I was fortunate enough to have with Tommy Vext of Bad Wolves. Doubtless you've heard his version of Zombie coming out of every single stereo around you all summer long. But his story is a remarkable one, and we'll get into it in just a little bit after we check out the latest from his band Bad Wolves. It's Hear Me Now.
Come let me up, 'cause I brought a flower for you. Your friends are faded, let me
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I am lucky enough to be joined by the unbelievably talented Tommy Vext of Bad Wolves here as we get ready for the show with them, Five Finger Death Punch, Breaking Benjamin, and nothing more. Tommy, welcome to the show. Thank you for hanging out. Welcome to San Diego.
Oh, thank you for having me. That was quite an intro. I feel like I've got a lot to live up to tonight.
Well, hold on just a cotton picking minute because I've been following you with great interest for many years, only because
Benny.
Yeah.
Only because I'm old.
Well, I mean, just because you're an incredible vocalist that's, sort of been around the block a little bit. I had to write all this stuff down. So, Divine Heresy, you were in Snot a couple times.
Yes.
Westfield Massacre, Vext. You did a stint as Five Finger Death Punch's vocalist.
Yes, sir.
And now, Bad Wolves.
Yes, sir.
And if you're like me and everybody else that I've talked to about this, everyone's always known you're like this absolutely incredible vocalist, incredible presence, amazing front man.
Oh, thanks.
And it seems like everyone's just been waiting for the right thing for you to jump off the way it has with Bad Wolves.
Yeah.
What's that been like?
Sometimes it feels like it's happening to somebody else. The whole band is, we're all friends.
Uh-huh.
So all the guys in the band are all metalheads. We're all from veteran bands,
Uh-huh.
Kyle's played in This Moment and Scar the Martyr with Joey Jordison, ex-Slipknot, and Vimix as well. Obviously, John is a founding member and, wrote most of the best of the material of Devil Driver. John plays every instrument.
Mm-hmm.
He's like a musical genius. And Doc from God Forbid, a longtime friend of mine. We've been friends since we were kids. We've been jamming together since we were like 22 years old. And then, and Chris played in Bury Your Dead, and he's like also a super tech for like much, much bigger like pop stars and rock stars and stuff. So it's like, it's just this kind of crazy thing where we've all been in the industry so long and kind of doing our own thing and chipping away that we had no idea that this was going to blow up the way that it did. And, we're just taking it one day at a time,
Yeah, no, I mean, the thing about you guys that I think probably surprises a lot of people, you step on stage with a lifetime of experience and you are veterans, and that's going to come across when you play live. But for all the bands that you've talked about, it's a different kind of success than the one that you're experiencing right now, where like my mom told me she liked your version of Zombie the other day. I was like, what? And
my mom got a free tattoo because of Zombie.
Right.
Yeah. She went to get her first tattoo. My mom's 69 years old, and she has a picture. I flew my mom to Disneyland a couple years ago for Thanksgiving, and we took a picture in front of the Ferris wheel, and it's her screensaver.
Uh-huh.
And she was looking at her phone while she was getting tattooed, and the guy was like, "How do you know the Bad Wolves singer?" And she's like, "That's my son." And the artist was like, "Your money's no good here, ma'am." So she called me and was like, "Tommy," I'm like, we're from Brooklyn, and she's still got a thick accent. She's like, "Tommy, you're famous. I'm so pretty. I got a free tattoo." And I'm like, "Ma, when did you get a tattoo?" So it's like,
as soon as it became free, thanks to you.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Leave the stimulation to the professionals.
Everyone is so smart.
KBRC, more stimulating talk radio.
There's something happening here, and you should know what it is. The Dumbing Up of America. Now, more AD on the radio.
We now return to our inspirational chat with Tommy Vext of Bad Wolves. If you had to, given the depth of your musical experience, if you had to pick one maybe band or one show that you went to or a record or maybe even a TV appearance or something like that made you go, this is it, music is it, I must do music with my life. Can you pick out what that would be?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it happened early on. I think it was like the first time I played CBGB's in 1996, and I was 14 years old in my first hardcore band. And I remember we hadn't even got there yet, and I think we stole my bass player's mom's car to drive the gear to the show. And then we had fake IDs because we weren't allowed to play.
At CB's? Yeah.
Yeah. And it was like a Tuesday night. And I remember like driving on the Gowanus Expressway and looking at Manhattan and just being like, this is it.
This is the life.
As a little kid.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was just like the struggle. Like, you know, it's for a lot of artists, you know, like yourself, people who are creative, it's for us, it's like, once you're a pickle, you can never be a cucumber again. It's too late.
That's a really good way of describing it.
It's just too late. And so, you know, once I've, you know, even as a child, I've tried, you know, I have other business ventures and I own 2 companies and I do other things. I have ancillary income and businesses outside of the music industry.
Hold on, wait. I'm just writing down that word so I can use it later and appear smart. Somebody make a note of the word ancillary, please.
Yes,
All right, thank
you. As in not primary sources of income, which enable me to make and create music the way that I want to without being told what it should sound like. But yeah, so I had taken breaks from music, and it's just like, it's almost like losing your arm. You're like still living and doing life and stuff, and my life was great, and I was like doing all this stuff, and I got involved in helping a lot of people, and that became my business, but there was just, I felt like I was missing my arm.
Right.
And then I picked up a microphone again, and I was like, oh yeah.
Oh yeah, that's who I am.
Yeah.
That's why it's a weird thing because there's teeny little bit that I've done of this sort of thing. There's absolutely no substitute for it. It's one of those things where you could be creative and maybe you could paint a picture or maybe you could write a book or maybe you could but there is literally no substitute for the feeling that you get from playing to a crowd that goes off, whether it's 50 people or 500 people or 500 or however, like it's literally a feeling that is impossible to replicate. Lemmy from Motorhead talked about that. He's like, that's it. When you break through to people, it's literally everything. It's good. Take note, kids. You want a form of ancillary income if you want to be a musician and be able to carry it on in the fashion that you would like to do, the way Tommy does.
Make sure that you find a way to make over $100,000 a year and then spend half of that on your band. And you're not going to get it. You're not going to get it back. And then do that for 20 years, and then maybe it'll happen.
You paint such a rosy picture.
Well, it just takes what it takes. You know what I mean? The industry's changed, and so a lot of people complain about it. You know, they're like, oh, people don't buy records and this and that. And that hasn't been my experience on every level. You know what I mean? And I think also, too, people who get into being in music, who they want to be a rock star and hook up with hot chicks and have all this money, it's now because it's so real and so it's more working class for the artists are working class.
Yeah.
You have to love it. And so the playing field gets cleared and only the people who are lifers survive and stay in this thing.
Yeah.
And so for all the other lifers, all the guys that are out there that are like trying it and it's not working and trying, do not quit before the miracle happens. And this is why. The art that these guys are creating, they're tinkering around in their basements and in their apartments and stuff. They are creating the music of the future, and they don't even realize it now. And it's discouraging because the industry is having a hard time recognizing what the next thing is going to be, mostly because everyone's afraid of losing their job. And in our circumstance, we were recognized by a rock star. Zoltan Bathory found this band. We've all been friends with Zo for a long time, and he said this band needs to be heard. And he took it to 11-7, and Alan, our label owner, heard what he was talking about, and they were like, "This doesn't sound like anything. There's a space for this. We need to put this out." You know, it may be, and with the exception of songs like "Hear Me Now" and "Zombie," our record is a metal record. It's brutal. You know, it pulls from all the traditions of like the classic Slipknot and Fear Factory, Slayer and Pantera records, and old Metallica, including Meshuggah and the new school bands like Periphery, and there's this weird amalgamation of different influences over the course because we love metal, so it's like from the beginning to now, and we listen to all these different bands and they influence us, and it was picked up. It was another artist, and so we always encourage other artists to like come to signing booths, bring your demos and your to our show, and give it to us. Yeah, we listen to it.
Yeah, no, it's funny. Like I think it might have been Jim Brewer who said he was like, this is how comedy and show business in general works. You work really, really, really hard for 10 to 15 years, and then a friend gives you a job. And it's just like you're creating, you're putting in the work, and eventually someone will wind up giving you that break. And it's amazing to think about how many, even guys like Dave Grohl. Like I think he said he wrote "Learn to Fly," and he was like, It's all right. Maybe a B-side, certainly not going on the record. And a lot of times, artists creating their own music are too close to it to recognize what they're sitting on. And his
Correct.
record label went, you're either crazy or deaf or both. This is huge, and it's going to take your Foo Fighters thing to the next level. And they were absolutely right. So I guess
for example, Zombie Almost was not on our record.
how close did it come to not being on the record?
Really close twice. At first, I didn't want to put it on the record because I'm a huge Cranberries fan, and I didn't think it was good enough. So the reason why we sent it to Dolores was for her approval.
Yeah. No, I was going to say, because you got her approval on it. So,
well, then she wanted to sing on it, and then obviously she was scheduled to sing on it and passed away the night before she was scheduled to record.
Yeah.
So then, again, that happened, and we were like, well, we definitely can't put it out now.
Yeah.
And we got with the label, and our label owner used to manage the Cranberries through most of their career, and that's how we came to the solution of we should honor her and we should put the song out, but her children should get the money. And then we were like, those are the conditions by which we put it out.
Yep.
And then the whole entire, the world metal rock community got behind it.
Yeah.
And it's been this crazy thing to be a part of. And, we were, because everyone bought the song, we were able to give a check for $250,000 to our kids in New York City, and they flew in to meet us and come to the show.
That's a beautiful
And we presented
thing.
them with a check, and our goal is by the end of the year to give them $1 million. Like, so we're out here championing the song, and this is a thing that's larger basically for rock music. It's a bigger picture.
Yeah.
Because the other genres of music and Billboard, and we're getting attention from Rolling Stone and Billboard and doing these interviews, and they're like, how does it feel, to be everyone says rock is dead, and here you guys are doing this, and I'm like, it's not. It's not dead. It's absolutely not. Look at this festival. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's not a festival. This is 4 bands playing an amphitheater tour, and half the shows are all sold out.
Yeah.
So tell me how rock is dead. I don't really, obviously.
No, I'm having a hard time seeing it as well.
Yeah. We might not get invited to walk on the red carpets because we're too gnarly, but, that's the thing. The higher ups and the pretty people, they don't want to see real artists, because if they let real people in, it's going to show how fake everything else is.
You have an interesting point with that. I think that's
Very true.
Super quick, I wanted to touch on something before we wrap up. I just find interesting about you. You're sort of a sobriety coach to people. You've been through some stuff, and you help people in their own recovery. And I wanted to mention that because having from the outside looking in, seeing I'm straight edge, but I've seen a lot of people struggle with it and sort of have come to me and been like, how do you do it? I'm like, I don't know, man. I just do it my whole life. I think you need to be talking to someone else, and really they need to be talking to someone like you. What's how did that wind up happening?
Well, essentially, when I moved from New York to LA, and I just I grew up in a working class community, and I grew up drinking. I had a job when I was 12. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And I drank when I was 13, and we were kids. That's what we did. Yeah. And so I think that when I moved to LA, I got involved in the party scene, and it just wound up taking me. And some people, I hear from all different people because I work in this field and I kind of live in this field, and sobriety is a big part of my life. It's like kind of the primary force by which I can do all the other things that I do, is make sure that I'm sober first, and then I can't handle anything else.
Make sure you're sober first, then the ancillary income looks after itself.
Yeah, well, it's not about money. It's about
I'm
about
kidding.
the stuff you can't buy. It's like having a spiritual sense of peace in your heart, which I never really had until I grasped the principles of sobriety and a different principle of living. And for everybody, I come across a lot of people. Some people do 12-step programs. Some people are not into that, and but it's really about having that shift. I have friends like you who maybe they had a parent or a relative who did drugs and drank, and so as a young person they were like, I will never do this, and they stuck to it. Mm-hmm. And then there are people like me who I got wrapped up in it, and it cost me everything, and then I had to make a change. I had to make a decision, and it was hard to do on my own. And so I got involved in a community of people, and I still am in touch with a lot of people in the music industry who we just have each other's back. We check in. We're like, hey, how do you feel? How are you doing? And it's good to have a support system and a network. And I think that's for anybody who thinks that it's a weak thing to get sober. It's not. It's the strongest thing a man can do or a person can do. is say, hey, I don't know and I need help, because that's how things change.
I think that's so important what you just said, and not just for matters of sobriety, but all sort of issues of there's absolutely no shame in asking for help, whether it be sort of a mental health situation, whether it be a sobriety situation.
Yeah.
And I think what you said, there's true strength in being able to ask for help. That's a beautiful thing to say. And anyone who's listening that does need help, know this. Tommy says that's cool, and it'll show that you're a strong person. And if you want to see this guy inspire you even further, make sure you get here to the show in time to see their show this evening.
That's right. We're going at 6 o'clock.
Going at 6 o'clock. So
right.
Pedal to the floor, my friends. Make it here quickly but safely so that you can see the guys in Bad Wolves do their thing. Tommy Vext, I could talk to you forever and ever. This has been great. I hope you'll come back.
Thanks, man. I'm grateful to be here. Thank you guys for having us, and thank you for your support. And we're going to have a good time tonight. It's going to be a party.
Awesome.
Another head hangs slowly, child is slowly taken, and the violence causes silence. Who are we mistaken? But you see, it's not me, it's not my family. In your head, they are fighting with their tanks and their bombs and their bombs and their drones. In your head, they are crying. What's in your head? In your head, zombie, zombie, zombie. What's in your head? In your head, zombie, zombie, zombie. Another mother's breaking, heart is taking over. When the violence causes silence, we must be